Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of DABCC TV. As always, I'm excited about this episode as we have a great one for you today. We have the guys from, or one gentleman, from a company called Akorri to show us off their BalancePoint solution. And we've done a podcast with these guys in the past, so if you want to know more, go to that podcast. But if you want to see it and really get down and dirty with this application and see what it does, right? Seeing is believing, then you're in the right place. So for my guest today, I want to introduce Rob Strechay, who is one of the main guys over at Akorri. And I'm not going to introduce, I'll let him introduce himself. So let's dive straight into this. So for my first question, Rob, who are you and what do you do over at Akorri?
Sure. Rob Strechay again from Akorri. I'm the VP of Strategic Accounts. I've actually been with Akorri for 4.5 years it's been around. So if I can't answer your questions, there's really probably only one person, our CTO and founder, Rich Corley, who could probably answer that one question I couldn't get for you.
Well, very good. Then we have the right guy. So if you come for some good virtualization management, resource performance optimization, product, then you're in the right place because we have the right guy. So let's move forward. So my second question before we get into the demo is, can you tell us just real briefly, who is Akorri and what do you guys do?
Sure. So Akorri really is focused on performance and capacity planning within virtual and physical infrastructure, both servers and storage, by really bringing to market an agentless product that lives in the virtual environment as a virtual appliance, eating our own dog food, I like to say, and really going out over the network to talk to those different elements so that you can bring back and correlate data from your servers, your storage, be it a AIX LPAR machine or your VMware virtual machines, your ESX servers, the actual storage behind it in the arrays. So you get a better view from front to back and understand where the little bottlenecks are. Is it you bottlenecked at a CPU, you bottlenecked at memory? Is it just contention for the back-end spindles? Maybe there's not enough, maybe there's too many. Where can you actually tune those knobs within your VM environment and your storage environment so you can get higher efficiencies? And that's really what we focus on for our customers.
Well, perfect. Okay, enough about all this talking stuff. Let's, if you want to know more about Akorri, again, go back to the podcast we recorded. We did a great job, and they'll really walk you through the verbal aspects of their solution, right? But let's get into let's see it. So, Rob, can you up in front of us, it looks like we have the BalancePoint dashboard. So can you explain to us what are we looking at and what are you going to show us?
Sure. So I'm going to kind of take you on a little trip down through some troubleshooting, how you optimize a VM environment, how you understand how it plays with the physical environment so you can get like a baseline and really something that you can optimize off of so that you can see how our customers really have used that to plan for next year and really manage service levels and, more importantly, the expectations of those users who've moved from physical to virtual so that you can get to things like virtualizing Exchange, virtualizing SQL, getting to those heavier weight applications so that really they can get that second level of ROI within their VMware infrastructure. Does that sound good?
That sounds great. So how do we do this? I mean, that sounds great. What does that mean? How do we do it?
Yeah, so I think the nice thing is that once we've been installed, I think you can see that this is a web-based infrastructure. It's a download. You download the appliance and it goes out and talks, like I said, over agentlessly over Ethernet IP to get all of the information. When it does that, you come in, you see it. You use an IP address to web in using secure HTTPS, and you get a better understanding of what's talking to what, who's using what resources. What we found is that, by coming in this way, you get a better high-level overview. So what you're looking at here is, what applications, and by application we mean workload. It could be a SQL workload, it could be an Exchange workload, and that's why you see generic types there. It's really a workload type. How well is that workload being serviced? And then, because, really what you're doing is providing a service, and it's that virtual guest out to that customer, and it happens to have an application on it. So we really take an infrastructure look, looking down next at the servers and saying, what is the breakout of the types of servers we have here, and then into the storage, what types of arrays are we looking at? And we cover, all the major types of arrays and OSs from that perspective, both physical and virtual, but really to try to give you a high-level overview of what's going on in here. And allowing you to then, drill into any particular application, say my Microsoft SQL application, so I get a better understanding of what's going on underneath the hood. I can get in quickly and get to what's the root cause, not only seeing up here that, hey, CPU and memory are green and storage is red, but looking into what does that mean. And this is where we get into some of the analytics, because really the core technology that Akorri puts out there is the analytics, which is the so what behind, hey, my storage response time is high. What does that really mean? And being able to see that what thresholds are really being exceeded by understanding that your storage response time is 393. Well, what does that mean? How many transactions or CPU turns am I doing, and how many I/O turns am I doing down below? So being able to get a better understanding of the rate of transaction to the rate of response time, and helping people understand, well, is this good or bad? Looking back over, week over week, month over month, to get a better understanding, and then letting you, zoom in on a particular point in time so that you can get an understanding, okay, this is where I was, this is where I've gone to, what do I want to look at, so that I can really see, okay, this is when the guy calls me up on, Tuesday morning and says, hey, SQL was slow on the weekend. I was re-indexing my 90 gig SQL database, not really a huge database there. Why did it take 3 hours instead of 2? You can go back in time and take a look at, storage response time was pretty high. I can look at to see if it was outside of normal variables and be able to say, okay, well, let's analyze that and then look at it from a workload perspective. So what we allow you to do is really click in and analyze what's going on in that infrastructure. Because I might not know, is that response time normal or abnormal? Well, we have something called abnormality analysis, and what that really does is give you the 95th percentile. Hey, 5% of the time you're going to be outside of this. For the real, techie geeky folks on watching, it's really a 2 sigma standard deviation from norm, which is the 95th percentile. So, again, we have some mathematicians. I'm not one of them, but they are the ones who go in there and say, hey, your response time looks normal, your IOPS, total IOPS look normal, and your read and write IOPS look fairly normal. So really, based on, what you've been doing and what you've been doing over the last 10-plus days, as it gets smarter each day, this is really pretty normal, and, really you shouldn't have to worry too much about it. Although, normal may not be good enough for those people and those applications you're running, and you still get to see that, my storage was red. Hey, my E-volume was red. What is it really connected to, and do I really care about it? And one of those things we allow you to then really delve into and understand, okay, what is connected to what? So being able to go inside and say, hey, this Microsoft SQL application is really connected to this back-end storage array through this ESX server. So, seeing the SQL is using these 2 volumes, these 2 VMDKs, mapping back to 2 data stores, one that happens to be on direct attached storage and one that's actually back here on my storage array. Well, I understand that, left to right, the most red thing is down here at this storage array. Well, what's going on there? You can quickly click in and be able to see and be led to your usage threshold is exceeded. Do you want to see what applications are contending? And by that, again, we go back to the concept of, applications contending for this back-end set of spindles in the back-end. So quickly trying to get you to the understanding of where the hot spots are, being able to show you what we call our usage index. Once again, the smart math guys taking all these different variables, and I kind of look at it as, when we looked at that topology, all those different pieces all have different things. You had IOPS, CPU, memory. You have all of these different factors and variables that could go wrong, and understanding that, we try to bring those back by using our modeling under the hood to give you, hey, your index 0 to 100, where am I? Being, lower on this index is better, less queuing. But getting to see that this AIX 6.2 machine that happens to be a physical is actually competing and enforcing queuing, which is bad from an I/O perspective on this SQL system. Not only that, you can then see what is the impact across that from a response time perspective and a throughput. So as the response time for SQL climbs, I can see also that my response time stays about the same. Again, throughput goes up, and my throughput on my AIX system comes down. So now I could do a stored vMotion, maybe move that SQL Server off to another data store, get a better understanding. But really, trying to track that types of things that are going on so that you can get a baseline, get to a real steady state. And one of the things that it helps you understand is really, okay, what are the pieces that make this up? What are the different applications? So if I go back to, say, my SQL Server here, I can go back to it, and what I'm brought to is an overview of that entire server, and I get to see its cluster affiliation, what host, ESX host is it on, what resource pool is it in. So if I want to take a look at the cluster view for that particular asset, maybe I'm looking at doing some sort of service level guarantees by putting different applications into different VM resource pools, kind of foldering those applications. We're seeing a lot of that, especially with all the talk about, cloud and where clouds are. I mean, I talk at a lot of VMUGs, and I like to say, you guys are doing clouds. You guys are there. What you need to do is just figure out how you turn this into a service, and one of the ways that VMware presents a nice way is understanding what is the host overhead versus your different resource pools, and then tracking those as a baseline so you can get a better understanding where have we been over the course of the month, the week, the year, and getting a better understanding of, am I within my tolerances within these resource pools, both from a CPU and a memory perspective, so that I can get an understanding, okay, here's how much CPU I have, here's how much memory I have to give, who's using what amount of resource, and being able to, charge back on that. So I think a lot of what we try to do is present a lot of different information from various different facets, be it from a cluster view, from a host view, or be it from inside a particular, different resource pool, so you can get an understanding of, what am I entitled to, another kind of VM-like analytic that says, hey, if everybody in this resource pool gets busy, here's how much you can expect to get out of that cluster if all of the cluster is busy. So you really understand that under load, what are you going to get? So you don't want to wait until everybody gets busy to see how much load you have and how much load you can take. This kind of gives you that early warning system, again, that insurance blanket that you can effectively start to move to these higher tier of applications, those tier 1 applications that really have those weightier requirements for them. And really bringing that back to, an understanding that at the same time, I want to look at and, report upon this because I have a boss, and being able to say, hey, I want to look across, and we come up with something we call our performance index, which is a gas gauge per ESX server. So you can look through your cluster and see imbalances. And this takes into effect not just the CPU and the memory of that ESX server and what each guest is using, but it looks across the I/O. So are you doing backups? And are backups causing you to have spikes in the middle of the night? And do you really care or not that you have an imbalance at that point in time? But why would all of them be imbalanced on one particular server and not on another across your cluster? So looking across the cluster to understand maybe you have to shift some guests, by using vMotion or storage vMotion, and be able to get a better, real view of what's going on. And then once you understand what ESX servers are really causing the loads, again, being able to have those reports at your fingertips so that you can go in and say, hey, here's that ESX server, here's a couple of the different ESX servers we were looking at, here's QA42 and all the ESX or the VM guests on there. What does the VM think it's using? Well, this VM thinks it's got 2 procs. It thinks it's using 32% of the CPU on average and 99% max. And actually it's using 89% of the 4 procs in this ESX server at load. So at max load, and its ready time is, a max of 15%. So how long is it waiting for CPU becomes a big indicator. But what's even more telling is that this one up here that really does very little load is actually waiting 26% of the time. So when it gets busy, it's not getting the service level it expected because of this one getting really busy and chewing up a lot of that resource. And we do the same thing for the memory and for the I/O, so you get a better understanding that, hey, this particular VM's queuing from a 47 perspective. 47, when we have these thresholds, best practice built in, 47 for a SQL server is pretty high. 47 for an OLTP database, not so much. So being able to understand the different types of workloads need different types of response times, queuing factors, both from a CPU, memory, and also from an I/O perspective, bringing that all to one place so that from a VM perspective, you get a better understanding of what's going on.
What else would you like to show us? So that there's many more things.
Yeah, so there's a lot more. I think that, as we talked about earlier on, I could probably go on for an hour on this, but that's, I think, showing you from a perspective of how you get back and forth in these different pieces and how you can see that front to back and get a real understanding of what's going on so that you can go down and look at a particular host and dive into and understand, okay, how efficiently is the memory being used? So I think what we've tried to do is really fit in to how organizations really utilize their current management tools. So how are you looking in the physical world so that you also know in the virtual world you're getting that level of experience? So for instance here, hey, my host CPU for my ESX server is starting to scale up. I can see here that my guest VM could get this much, but it's really only using down here. Efficiency-wise, it's only getting a 5. And this is one of the few where you really want to be at 100 from a CPU perspective, or actually it's getting an 84. So it's actually using, when it is using the actual CPU utilization, it's actually using it fairly efficiently, and it's not really bogging down. And one of the ways we see that is a VM stat that helps you correlate that. Yeah, my percent ready time is only a 1. And really, most people don't worry about percent ready time until they get up around 10. So again, it's helping people understand, okay, have I turned the knobs correctly? Am I giving enough resource to that particular? And if I'm not, what is the actual impact of that? So we also developed things like our virtual machine migration report, so I can see, hey, this particular VM lived on 3 different hosts. It's moved 4 times, and these are the dates it was last on those hosts. So I can get a better understanding of, okay, these are the important things to know. And maybe I want to look at the guy who's moved 8 times among 5 different hosts, and it was across a 24-hour period. Recently, I was at a customer, and they were utilizing VMware's dynamic resource service for being able to shift their loads around the DRS algorithm, and that's basically you go exceed a threshold for a certain amount of time, and it migrates and vMotions your different load around. Well, that actually has a disruptive effect, both from a CPU, memory, and an I/O perspective. So understanding what's going on and who's being impacted by also looking at, okay, within that cluster, who's all sharing those pieces of infrastructure, and then looking back and saying, okay, well, everybody who's on this particular piece of storage, if I go and start to do a storage vMotion, I'm going to add more I/O to this. Really, what am I doing to this particular piece of storage? Who am I going to thrash? Do I need to really worry about that? And then also you can, from an overall planning perspective, and when people say, hey, what application lives where, being able to get that really, total view of what's going on and be able to say, hey, this is really everybody who's sharing that particular array. Here's all my ESX servers. Here's a few physical servers that are in there utilizing it. Maybe it's this one particular ESX server I care about, and I want to go back and look at it more in depth. I can quickly move around my environment to get a better understanding. The nice thing is we also come up as a tab within Virtual Center through the Virtual Infrastructure Client integration. It's a 5-minute free integration that the vast majority of our customers take us up on. We point them how to do that, and it's pretty easy. So it's really about, getting an idea from a, troubleshooting, hey, get your hair out from being on fire, really look at what are the places for optimization and, opportunities for optimization through both reporting and being able to visualize it, and then really looking into things such as our performance index and other types of indexes that we offer, our usage index and our performance index per VM and per ESX server to get a better understanding of, okay, this is really where this gas gauge is. Here's my high watermark. I can go and put, 20 more VMs on this set of ESX servers. I can now take on that project that we have planned for Q1 of next year to put SAP on virtuals. And you know what? I can actually leverage, I don't need to buy 50% of that gear that we had on the docket. Now I can go and leverage what gear I have existing for some of the web servers, app servers, and maybe we're going to do this database, and we'll actually start with a 1-to-1 ratio, and then we'll move to a 2-to-2 ratio, and we'll look at what applications actually play well and getting a baseline for that. And that allows you to really go back to your business units and say, hey, here's the service level you're getting, here's the difference we're making from that perspective, and then being able to say, hey, I have the metrics to really back that up by going back. Not only to mention that, you can look at and even go back into a server chargeback model, either virtual or physical for that matter, and say, here's how much CPU, here's how much memory you're using, and here's how many gigabytes of storage you're using. This is what it's costing you as a physical, this is what it's costing you as a virtual. See what the difference is maybe on a depreciated finance or depreciated lease schedule, and being able to go back and say, here's really where I want to focus my cost savings around that. So we've had a lot of customers who've had a lot of different ways of utilizing our product to really get at the service level management, either hard or soft service level management, so that they can say, hey, I can safely move you into a VM. I can safely virtualize more. And in fact, we actually see greater than the average densities from our VMware customers, where I think the industry averages are around 16 guests per ESX server. Our customers are averaging well over 30 guests per ESX server on similar hardware. So it's I think one of the things that we like to do is say the proof is in the pudding. Being able to put this out there and allow our customers to really prove out what's going on and what are the different things that have been going on within their different environments, so that they can get a better understanding of what is the stack ratios. Do I have a guest that's using or utilizing more than its fair share, or do I not have a guest that's utilizing more than its fair share, so that I get a better understanding of what's unused, what's overused, and who's my top talker from a CPU, a memory, and a storage aspect.
Well, very good, very good. So one thing we didn't talk about, and you talked about it a little bit, but what does it take to install this? So, for example, when we came into this video, you were already up, or the admin console was already up. It had all this, all the servers and the clusters and the VMware installed, and added to it. What did you do to get to that point?
That's a great question. I think this is another thing that helps separate us from the kind of wannabe management tools out there, and I really look at it as a feather in our cap, that the fact that we can be stood up in as little time as 45 minutes to usually installations don't take any more than 2 to 4 hours for a entire data center. And what I mean by that is really what we need to get up and running is credentials. Say we use things such as WMI and SSH on the guest side, so talking to those guests or to those physical servers, be it a physical Linux, Unix server or Windows server, or a guest of the same flavors, and a credential within the VMware environment, so that we can talk to Virtual Center and talk to the ESX servers themselves. And some of the data we get, you can't get out of Virtual Center because it's not in there. Even when you turn the logging level up, which actually is not a good practice, and we don't recommend turning the logging levels up, which also differentiates us from other people who just solely collect from Virtual Center. Once you have that stood up, really it's collecting from the back-end array as well. That's through APIs, or what is the Storage Management Interface API, which is SMIS. But really, it's the most time is really the download of the application. You're really downloading an appliance. It's a VM. It's a full guest that you download, and you use VM Converter, and you're up and running in about 45 minutes. We've seen people with 600 servers and about 7 arrays be up and running in as little as an hour. So I think that the nice thing about the product is, we've taken great pains to understand and listen to our customers over the last 4.5 years that we've been shipping the product, that really, hey, this is really what we want. We want a zero-touch, quick installation that gets us up and running in the quick time to value. So within 1 hour, you'll be able to see things such as the different scorecards, as well as being able to see, hey, which are my top servers and what color are they? So within an hour, you're seeing things such as this: what's my performance index? How much gas is left in a particular server so that you can say, hey, yeah, this is where I want to go and focus on, and here's some quick hits that I can get. This guy was right. This is some stuff that was, longer-term trends that were boiling up kind of thing.
Well, perfect, perfect. Well, we like to keep these videos sort of short and sweet. The podcast, definitely, again, guys, we have the podcast. So if you want to learn more, definitely go over there. But also, if somebody wants to learn more, what do they need to do, Rob?
Absolutely. I think they can go right up to our website, which is Akorri.com. That's AKORRI.com. And right up there, there's a ton of different things. You can sign up to actually walk through the product. We call it our simulator, and it's under demo/demo. And when you go in there, you can actually log into the particular server that I'm utilizing here for the demo that I'm showing. So you can actually come in here, kick the tires right over the internet, and get a better view of what's going on, and really see all the reports, see the richness of it. And then you can also sign up there, and somebody will give you a call and see what you thought of it. And if you had questions, they'll be able to answer it and be able to give you a better view of what's going on. There's also another 19-minute demo up there as well that goes through quite a bit more detail on the particular analytics and things of that nature that really make us special.
Perfect, perfect. And, of course, we will, as always, create links over to those resources that Rob talked about within the show notes. So if you guys definitely visit Akorri.com. Again, that's AKORRI.com. And for more information, but if you're on the webpage, if you're on DABCC.com, just click on the show notes or scroll down to the show notes and head on over. Rob, before we go ahead and call this a episode, is there anything else you would like to show us or tell us?
No, I think that's great. I really appreciate the time and to talk to your audience.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time to talk to chat with us, as always. So that being said, we'll go ahead and conclude this episode of DABCC TV. So as always, I want to thank you again, Rob. But most importantly, no offense to you, Rob, but most importantly, I want to thank each and every one of you guys out there for taking the time to listen to